What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the new beautiful 16X ASG gaming laptop from Aorus. We'll unbox it and take a look at some of the new specs and features before diving headfirst into some gaming. Thanks for clicking the video and I hope that you enjoy this one. We'll go over the specs obviously a little bit later once we've got it unboxed and see what we've got inside. I love that logo, such a cool logo. And there is the laptop. It's in a nice sort of protective sleeve. We'll just put that to the side for 1 second so we can go through everything that's inside the box. So we've got a little sort of envelope here. It's probably going to be the instructions, I'd imagine. Quick start guide, your warranty guide. We'll just put those to the side. Power lead. Now this has come from America, so we have got the American adapter there. So we're just going to have to find a UK plug adapter to sort that out and get it charged up. And in this side, obviously we get the actual brick part of the power adapter, so we can get this thing charged up and turned on, sort of your usual laptop charger. So now we've seen what's inside the box, let's actually see what the laptop itself looks like. It's like a midnight blue. I don't know the specific color, I'll have to get it off of the website, but I hope that you can see that. Look at that. The sort of rainbow effect on the logo there. So this is a 16-inch laptop. Like I said, we'll go over the specs a little bit later, but so let's take a closer look at the shell of this laptop. I absolutely do adore this colorway, but I'll put the measurements up on the screen of this 16-inch laptop, and it comes weighing in at around 2.3 kilograms, or about £5. Then a closer look to the underside here, where we can see there are some fantastic details with the Aorus branding. We can see the air vents and where the hot air is going to be extracted from. There are plenty of ports available on this unit. We've got an audio jack, USB-A port, USB-C display port, micro SD card slot on the right side, and on the left we have the DC in, RJ45, HDMI 2.1, USB Type A, and another USB-C with Thunderbolt and Power Delivery 3.0. Quick look at the back of the laptop. Again, we see some vents here that are for that hot air extraction, and some more awesome details throughout this laptop. On the keyboard area, we can see the Nvidia GeForce and Intel stickers here, letting us know exactly what's inside this one. We'll go ahead and get it switched on, and then we get to see some of that glorious RGB for the first time. The keyboard is a 3-zone RGB backlit keyboard with up to 1.7mm key travel. And the back area we just saw also has some nice RGB, and a little Aorus logo is projected out. It was a little bit hard to capture on video though. Closing the shell here to get a better look at that glorious RGB, which can be changed, and we'll take a closer look at that just a little bit later. The trackpad is a very nice size and one of the better laptop trackpads that I've used, with 2 different levels of clicking feedback. So you can lightly tap or press a little bit harder, to which you also get the click feedback from the trackpad itself. It's pretty responsive, and as a fan of trackpads, this is a nice one to use. The keyboard is pretty sweet as well. I'm a fan of laptop keyboards, probably because I enjoy the low profile keys, and these feel great to type on. Decent feedback and response within the keys. Now we can get onto that gorgeous 16:10 aspect ratio WQXGA 165Hz refresh rate display with 3 milliseconds response time. The display is gorgeous. There's a 91% screen to body ratio on this shell, meaning you get way more display to immerse yourself into the gameplay. Moving on to the specs of this machine, we'll take a look at the Gigabyte software, where you have all the options to control different settings. There's an SSD tool giving you information about the SSD life, etc. And then you're able to go into the software to make use of AI Nexus to control the performance of the laptop, where you can pick different modes like power saving or performance, ability to adjust keyboard brightness, further options to control the fan modes depending on your preference or whatever it is that you're actually doing on the laptop. These can be manual or use the AI software to make these auto. There's also an AI generator for stable diffusion image generating, if that's your thing. And then you can go into the dashboard area to see all the specs and temps of your laptop. So you can see things here like CPU temperature, GPU utilization, and now we can see the specs of this machine, which has an Intel i7-14650XH CPU and an Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070 laptop GPU, which has 8 GB of memory. And then of course we have 32 GB of DDR5 RAM. So this thing is pretty punchy. Last but not least, we can control the RGB for the keyboard, as we just said, the ability to change the color, you can change the brightness levels, and then the actual effect itself. So either like static or pulsating, and you can see the RGB areas in here too, being the keyboard and the back end part of the laptop. Along with all the other great specs so far of this laptop, this also comes with Dolby Vision Atmos. So you can enjoy better quality pictures and better sound whilst consuming content on this laptop that is viable with the Dolby Vision. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and show you any demos on here because I don't want to get flagged for copyright. But if you want to know what Dolby Vision is all about, then head to their website and it will explain it for you. And again, you get Dolby Vision Atmos, so you also get the better sound quality whilst consuming content. Another great feature of this laptop is actually a built-in button for Copilot. So if we just go ahead and press that button there, you'll see it actually opens up a Copilot window. So you can go ahead and ask any related questions that you need answering. This laptop also comes equipped with Wi-Fi 7, meaning faster speeds, greater capacity, and lower latencies. Along with the built-in keyboard and trackpad, there is also a full HD 1080p webcam. Now, don't expect miracles from this thing, but if you're on the go and need to take a meeting or a call, then I'm pretty sure this will suffice. Right guys, so now we've looked at the laptop case, we've looked at the keyboard, the trackpad, the beautiful screen. Let's actually see how this thing performs. So we've got a mouse connected, obviously, because we're going to play some games. You're not going to use the trackpad for gaming. So let's load up a couple of games and I can show you the performance and how well this thing actually runs these games. Now, first up, we're going to try some Manor Lords. Obviously, this game has been pretty much my go-to recently. I've been enjoying it loads and it runs it fantastically. Now, we are connected to the power. If ever you want to get the full performance out of your gaming laptop, you do need to be plugged in to the mains so you can get the full uses of your GPU and all the other components in your system. Yes, they do have a battery, they are portable, but the difference between it being plugged into an outlet versus a battery is quite significant. But we will touch on that a little bit later on this video. We'll unplug it and we'll see what the performance is like just running off the battery. So you might hear the fan spin up on this. This is because we have this set to the gaming performance options. As you saw in the Gigabyte software, now we're plugged in. We can run everything on max settings. We have the fans blowing out, working as hard as they can to cool all the components, which means you're going to get the best performance in with your gameplay. So that's exactly how we play. And because we've got an Nvidia graphics card, it means we get to take advantage of things like DLSS, which as far as I'm aware uses AI software to basically allow the games to perform better. I don't know exactly how it does it, so we're not going to talk too much about the game. This isn't a game review, but this is Manor Lords. As you can see, the graphics are pretty mental and it's handling it beautifully. We're running at 80 FPS. We tick well over into the hundreds at times on this, and I have no issues playing this game. I've actually been live streaming most evenings using this laptop over on Instagram, and I've been streaming away using OBS and running the games with no issues whatsoever. We'll go ahead into third person now, just so you can sort of really see what the game looks like and how well it runs. I mean, currently we're running at 104 FPS. And I mean, the game looks so visually stunning, so you know that the graphics cards and all the other components are working hard to render this. But yet we're running at well over 100 frames, so it's not struggling at all. And as you saw earlier from the settings, we do have max settings. We are actually ultra and high on everything that we can possibly do. Right, so now we're into some Battlefield. Now Battlefield, this is 128 players in this game. It's a very visually stunning game again. It looks really good. And yet we are running incredibly decent frames. At the minute, currently running around, we're at 150 FPS, which is kind of insane for a gaming laptop to be putting out that kind of performance. Now, disclaimer, I'm not that good. Ignore any gameplay. This is just to show you how smooth it runs, not how good I am at the game. So as you can see, we're running at the full resolution of the screen, 165 Hz refresh rate, which is incredible again for this screen. And then we're running at relatively decent high graphics. Now we could probably up these considering we're running well into 150 FPS. So we'll knock these up and see exactly how it runs. So we're just going to go ahead and put it onto Ultra, run everything Ultra, and let's see how it goes. Again, we're still into 120 FPS at this point. It's still running incredibly smooth. Managed to get a nice little headshot on the film there, which I'm relatively happy about, because trying to film and play at the same time is always a little bit difficult and seems to show you up. So what's the laptop like for productivity or working on? So for me, programming. Well, obviously it's really good at productivity and coding. I mean, running VS Code and things like that, it doesn't actually take as much computing power as what people think it does. So you can run VS Code on, you know, relatively lower spec laptops and things. It only starts becoming a challenge when you start running sort of Docker and you start having different programs. Perhaps you've got Postman running, multiple Chrome windows and things like that. But with 32 gigabytes of RAM, you're able to have multiple windows open, your programming windows, and more, and it doesn't slow down. We've already spoke about the keyboard, but it is quite a nice keyboard to work from. Now, you'll often see that I do choose to use the MacBook keyboards when I am programming rather than an external keyboard. I like the way that they feel, they work for me, and I have no issues, which is why I use them. Now, the keyboard probably isn't as good as a MacBook's keyboard. I think MacBook are up there with, you know, the very best in terms of inbuilt keyboards, but it is a very good keyboard. The keys are low, they're pretty tactile, you get a sort of decent feel to them. You get decent response. I feel like I can press the keys without making too many mistakes. They're spaced apart wide enough, and it kind of does almost imitate a MacBook keyboard, or at least those lower flat profile keyboards, which I do very much prefer using. But I know the majority of you are picking up a gaming laptop to be able to kind of do it all. Your sole focus isn't going to be just programming or productivity work. Yes, you can do your emailing, you can do your coding on here, but you can also take it to the next level and play all of your games, which is important. So we've now gone ahead and connected the laptop up to an external screen, which will then bring us on to talking about the battery and the performance of the laptop without being plugged into the mains. So the USB-C power delivery or pass-through charging is actually keeping the laptop charged. Now, this does depend on what type of monitor you're using in terms of what sort of output and power you'll be able to receive through the USB-C port. Now, it's not going to be as good as I'm aware as the actual power brick unless your monitor supports that and can pass through that kind of power through the monitor itself through the USB-C cable. So whilst it is on charge, if we're likely to play some heavy gaming, this will probably likely lose power whilst it's still being charged. Whereas if you're connecting it via the mains, you're going to stay topped up whilst playing really heavy games. So we're connected to the external monitor. Again, I'm not sure what sort of power we're actually getting through the USB-C charging. It doesn't output a lot, and I do often have issues when I'm using even the MacBook where the screen bar actually doesn't power on because the power delivery through the BenQ monitor, at least with the adapter that I'm using, doesn't put out that much power. So this laptop, whilst it's kind of being charged, is almost like it's running on battery power. Now we're hooked up to an external monitor, which is going to use sort of computing power at that point. So you are going to want to be hooked up to the mains if you're going to be using an external monitor, at which point, if you're indoors using an external monitor, you can be hooked up to the mains. But just for this part of the video, we're just using the USB-C charging. Now in terms of light work, again, like coding, you can see here that we can type, we can work on this. You'd be able to do your programming work, whether it's your emailing or whatever it is that you do for your day-to-day stuff that you need to get involved with, that you will be able to do with the external monitor and the USB-C charging. But if you're going to want to game on this thing on an external monitor, you are going to need to be hooked up to the power. We'll pop that down and we're running well into a game, 90, 100 FPS. The game is very playable, it's super clear, it's not choppy, frames aren't dipping at all. Super, super good gameplay. Right, so now let's bump the resolution up. Rather than using the same resolution as the laptop, let's use what the actual monitor resolution is. So the laptop is 2560 by 1600 and the monitor is 3840 by 2160. So let's pick that resolution, which is going to require, again, more computing power, but let's see how the frames look after we bump this up. As you can see, we're running again. It's even got the FPS down here, around 50 to 60 FPS, which, I mean, look at the game. The game looks incredible on this external monitor. 66, 80. It's kind of varying around 50 to 80 FPS. Maybe the battles would reduce in some dropped frames. But again, this is running on max settings. You know, you can't make this any better in terms of visually. And this is how it's running. Now you can hear the fans in the laptop obviously spinning up. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Again, I have all my settings set to basically run at best quality. You know, I don't want any slowdown. I want this thing to run as fast as it possibly can. So if you open up the Gigabyte Control Center in here, you'll be able to see some of your CPU temperature. So CPU's obviously getting quite hot. We're using memory. GPU utilization is at 100%, which is good really because you want to use your GPU more than your CPU when playing games. So it's using the GPU power to play the game. So in here we can see our fan control options. You do have your normal, you have turbo, you have eco, and you have power. So this isn't actually, I guess, the highest fan control. If we was to switch that to turbo, now you can really hear them spin up. They really spin up. I mean, the noise for me doesn't bother me. Fan noise has never been an issue. My PC that sits behind me gets quite loud, not a problem. But again, in here, some of the other settings, we've just got it set to performance, so the fans are always going to be loud. If you didn't want fan noise, you come in here and you can play around with the fan, but you will have to reduce some of your visuals because you're not going to be able to get the max out the internals of the machine whilst having the fans set to low and trying to play the games. I'm just going to go through the game a little bit here and just kind of show you just how well this runs. Again, we're running at 70 FPS, varying between 60 and 70 FPS. It's just super, super smooth gameplay. No issues playing with this whatsoever. And this is a relatively decent sized screen. This is, you know, we've seen the resolution. It's a 32-inch monitor. I hope it comes across in the video just how good this game looks and how clear and sharp this actual picture quality is. So we're now downstairs to show off the portability of the laptop. There is zero chance of us going outside today because I'm from the UK and it's absolutely hammering down with rain. So we're back with some Manor-Lords to now see how this thing runs on pure battery power alone. Now you are going to take a hit, quite a significant hit in fact, by not being plugged into the mains. This is because, as we've spoke about, all of the internals, the GPU, the fans, they just cannot reach their full power just through battery alone. It doesn't put out enough power to the components. But let's see how it performs with just the battery. So we're in Manor-Lords now currently. And again, we've not touched the settings and we're running around 20 to 30 FPS. Now you can see there's a little bit of choppiness from moving around, and I think that's pretty much expected. Now we'll go into the third person mode here, which I believe uses more processing power to sort of output this image. Running around, it seems to play okay. Now this is max graphics, so we can change the graphics down, and we'll do that just now. We'll reduce these slightly. And let's try medium, shall we? We'll just go ahead and put all of these to medium. We'll have the DLSS quality set to performance, so we can get, you know, performance out of this machine. Sharpening we'll have to medium. Max frame rate, obviously, we'll have it uncapped. And we'll see what we'll get at medium graphics. Now we're getting in the upper 30s, 37, 39. So again, you saw some skipped frames there where you are going to have some skipped frames. But was into 40 FPS at that point. But the game seems to run okay. I mean, this would be pretty playable for most people. Bear that in mind that you're going to have to reduce some of your settings if you're just purely playing off battery alone. And that's purely because the batteries in gaming laptops and in things in general just can't put out enough power to supply the GPU and the CPU and all the things to allow them to work at their max potential. I mean, we've seen the difference in the FPS there. You're sort of dropping about 60 frames when you're not going to be plugged into power. But to be able to have a gaming portable machine like this that can play the types of games like this, still have your keyboard, bring yourself a mouse along, and have a decent or a really good 16-inch display, 165Hz refresh rate, you know, the quality is amazing. The gameplay is incredible. Being able to take this around with you whilst you're out traveling and just running off battery power alone is still impressive in itself. Just some close-up shots now, just so you can kind of get an idea of what the graphics quality is like. I mean, obviously, like I've said, the game is going to drop some frames, but it's still totally playable. I mean, you could quite easily play this game with no issues. I mean, look, let's build a building. Can we get in another hut here? I think we can. Yeah, look, they can have a relatively decent sized house as well. Apparently we can't. There we go. Totally playable. So let's talk the actual battery life here. Now, battery life is going to depend on so many different variables. It's hard to kind of give you an actual figure. I'll get some figures from the manufacturer's website and I'll put them on the screen somewhere so we can go off what they suggest. But again, having the ability to change things like, so you can go in power saving mode instead of performance. And then in AI boost, you've got a meeting mode, which I believe quietens down the fans. You've got a power saving silence mode. Again, there's ways to increase your battery life. Additional things like, of course, turning off the RGB on the keyboard is going to also prolong your battery life, but no one wants to turn off the RGB. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say you're going to see around 2 to 3 hours worth of battery life just playing games. Now, of course, that is kind of pushing it to its limits. That's trying to get the max frames that we can. That's playing some decent games. I think you're going to sit around 2 to 3 hours. I've not tested it because, again, I'm mostly around in the house, so I'm always having access to being able to plug the power brick in and actually run it off the mains. Now, having all of this gaming power in a portable machine that is now pretty lightweight considering the specs of this thing and the size of the unit is pretty sweet. So there's one thing that you can now guarantee, and that's on my next trip, this is coming with me. So I think that's going to do it for this video. That's a look at the brand new Aorus 16X ASG Gaming laptop. It's an absolute beast. This can do everything. It can do all of your productivity work, your actual work, your emailing, your Excel, your programming, browsing the web, and of course, playing some of the latest AAA titles on some pretty impressive graphic settings with some awesome frame rates. I'm seriously impressed with this thing, and you can bet yourselves that when I'm out and about, this thing's coming with me. Thanks to Aorus for sending out the laptop for us to play around with, and thanks to you guys for clicking and watching the video. As always, I'll leave any relevant links down below in the description. If you've got any further questions, let me know and I'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you soon. Bye for now.